This is very special today. Not because we have Trump yarmulkes. And this really isn't about the president. This is about Jews. When I was growing up, the Democratic Party was where the Jews went, of course. If you were Republican, you couldn't be Jewish because they wouldn't even let you into their golf courses, for God's sakes. And that went on for quite some time. And in our lifetime, we have seen such an awful, dramatic shift in that paradigm. To the point that I don't know if you even can call something the Democratic Jewish Coalition. I'm sure there is one, but it's gotten so out of control. And that's why it's my pleasure today to bring Matt Brooks, who is the CEO of both the Republican Jewish Coalition, an organization dedicated to enhancing ties between the Jewish community and the Republican Party, and also the Jewish Policy Center, a think tank that examines public policy from a Jewish perspective. Matt was selected twice in 2006 and 2008 by the Jewish Forward, a liberal bastion, I might add, the Jewish Forward, as one of the 50 most influential Jews in America. He has a BA in political science from, I hope you're sitting down, Brandeis. I don't know how any conservative has come out of Brandeis. Excellent journalists like Thomas Friedman has come out of Brandeis. I don't need to tell you any more about that. Anyway, Matt received an MBA at Georgetown. He resides in Virginia with his beautiful wife, Deborah, who is here, and 2 children as well. Please put your hands together and welcome Matt Brooks.
Thank you all for being here. I appreciate everybody braving the elements. I have been fortunate to come to Aspen for 45 years now. And when I first started coming out to Aspen, it was this town. Nemo and I were talking about, his director, producer, and I were talking about how Aspen has changed. It's gotten much more corporate, more boring, and we used to, like when I was in my teens and young, hang out at these just raucous clubs after skiing Ajax all day at the Paragon and places like this. Now if you walk down the mall at 9 o'clock, it's like a ghost town. I think the secret that I learned now is all the action is at Chabad. You got testosterone, Molly, sex robots. This clearly is the old Aspen, and this is clearly the place to be. But it is really a pleasure to be with all of you here at the Aspen Jewish Community Center, the JCC. I want to express my deep thanks and gratitude to Dr. Alan Altman, who you all know, the unofficial mayor of Aspen, from what I understand. Thank you for your friendship and for inviting me to be part of this important speaker series. I'd also like to acknowledge some very special folks who are with us in the room tonight. My wife Deborah, who Alan was gracious enough to point out. I've got some dear friends with us, RJC board member Brad Rose and his wife Jacqueline, RJC board member Jay Zeidman, RJC board member Larry Levine. We are grateful for all you do to help the RJC and its success. And for those of you, there's an article on the tables in the back that just came out yesterday talking about the Republican Jewish Coalition as we celebrate this year our 40th anniversary. The title of the article is the RJC from David to Goliath, and our growth and our success would not be possible without your friendship and your commitment and all that you do on the board to help us. I also want to acknowledge our good friends Roger and Rita Carlisle, who are here with us as well, and all of you in the audience today. Thank you for being here. My friends, we are, as we all know, and the fact that you're here, you know that we are living through a time of unprecedented challenge. Perhaps the greatest test facing American Jewry in our lifetimes. Since October 7th, the world has changed, and we are witnessing in the streets, on our campuses, in the media, and yes, even in the halls of Congress, the most severe and dangerous wave of anti-Semitism I or many of us have ever seen. We have all seen anti-Semitic slogans like "Globalize the Intifada" chanted in protests across the cities. We've watched professors and celebrities glorifying terrorism. Musical acts openly support groups that call for Israel's destruction. In Washington, where I'm from, 2 Israeli embassy employees were assassinated on the streets of DC in cold blood. In Boulder, Colorado, not too far from here, a pro-Palestinian man threw Molotov cocktails into a crowd of pro-Israel rally attendees, severely burning several people and horrifically killing an 82-year-old woman who survived the Holocaust. This is not fringe, as some would like you to believe. This isn't rare. This is happening right now in the United States, in neighborhoods like ours. And it's not just a string of isolated instances. It's coordinated and emboldened movement to delegitimize and ultimately erase Jewish presence and identity in the public square. Jew hatred has become normalized. Let me be absolutely clear. Anti-Semitism is Jew hatred. It doesn't matter how it's dressed up as anti-Zionism, anti-Israel activism, social justice. If you target the Jewish people, our homeland, our identity, that is anti-Semitism, plain and simple. Now, we've seen this rhetoric on the rise for years, but after October 7th, the mask truly came off. While our brothers and sisters in Israel were burying their dead, while children were kidnapped and dragged into tunnels, while women were assaulted and families incinerated, people here in America were waving Palestinian flags and calling it resistance. Perhaps nowhere has this normalization been more visible than on our college campuses. These once proud institutions of learning have become hotbeds of hostility for Jewish students. Jewish kids are harassed, doxxed, intimidated simply for expressing support for Israel and for identifying as Jews. Walk into any classroom in an Ivy League school and you might hear a professor drawing moral equivalencies between the IDF and terrorist organizations. Attend a rally and you'll find student groups glorifying Hamas and Hezbollah. Jewish students are now having to organize in secret, afraid to speak out. Parents call us in tears, wondering if their children are safe. This is not freedom of speech. This is fear-driven silence. This is academic intimidation. And the danger is not limited to protests or academic discourse. It is now entering into our political system. Look no further than New York City's recent election. The candidacy and shocking primary victory of Zoran Mamdani is a wake-up call for every American Jew. This is a man who has openly aligned himself with those who justify terrorism against Israel, who refuses to condemn Hamas, who supports PDS, and has compared Israel to apartheid regimes. What's even more alarming is that polls show that 20% of Jews voted for him. That number should haunt us. Mamdani is not just a radical, he is the face of a movement. His win and the eventual Mamdaniism that will come out as a result of this has emboldened groups like Justice Democrats, Radical Progressives, Students for Justice in Palestine, CARE, and yes, even J Street, which masquerades as pro-Israel while undermining its security. This is not just about one candidate. It's about a shifting culture, a culture where Jew hatred is increasingly tolerated even from people in positions of power. Let me just tell you, if the Democrats take back the House with a slim majority, the squad, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and their ilk, will become the Freedom Caucus of the left, thereby exerting massive influence within the Democratic caucus in Congress. Their agenda, make no mistake about it, will shape policy. Their voices will drown out whatever is left of moderate pro-Israel Democrats. And that's a scenario we cannot afford. But here's what's most dangerous. And I want people to really pay attention to this. What is most dangerous is the silence and the complicity of liberal, progressive Jewish leaders. Let me say this as clearly as I can. The greatest threat to American Jewry is coming from within, from progressive Jews who refuse to stand up for our people, our homeland, and our future. These are the people who believe it is more important to be politically correct than to be morally right. They excuse anti-Semitism under the guise of allyship. They criticize Israel more harshly than they do its enemies. They march alongside people calling for our destruction and then wonder why anti-Semitism is on the rise. Where were Chuck Schumer and Jerry Nadler when Mamdani was spewing hate? Not only did they refuse to condemn him, they applauded his victory. Bernie Sanders, a Jewish senator, campaigned for him. This is not just cowardice, it's betrayal. And it sends a very dangerous message that Jew hatred, when politically convenient, is acceptable. The Jewish lives and Jewish safety are expendable in pursuit of progressive orthodoxy. Now, I am saying all the time to our staff and in interviews that I give, elections have consequences. And thank God we have President Donald J. Trump. No president in modern history has done more to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses. Under his leadership, Title VI protections for Jewish students were strengthened. He held universities accountable. He enacted policies to deport foreign students who traffic in Jew hatred. He made it clear that there is no room for anti-Semitism in America. And when it comes to Israel, President Trump has been the most pro-Israel president in history. In his first term, as we all know, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, withdrew initially from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, and brokered the historic Abraham Accords. In his second term, he has done even more, standing firmly with Israel after October 7th, providing critical military support against Iranian proxies, and backing Prime Minister Netanyahu with zero daylight between the United States and Israel. And we all know what he did, courageously sending B-2s to Israel to assist Israel, B-2s to Iran to assist Israel in the elimination of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Now, compare that to what we've seen under Biden and what we surely would have seen under Kamala Harris. Weakness, waffling, a foreign policy built on appeasement, not principles, a refusal to stand with our ally in her darkest hour. Now, let me be honest about a point. Anti-Semitism exists on the right as well. Voices like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Stu Peters are unacceptable and dangerous. And we at the Republican Jewish Coalition take this threat very seriously. We work independently and in partnership with allies like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro to call it out and root it out. We must be vigilant, always. We do not ignore it, we confront it loudly and consistently. But the threat from the progressive left is deeper, more systemic, and more culturally accepted. That makes it more dangerous. Because when hate hides behind moral language, it becomes harder to identify and even harder to fight. And that is why the RJC exists. That is why we were founded 40 years ago, to stand up in moments like this, moments when others fall silent. We are not afraid to speak truth to power. We are not afraid to defend Israel, to defend Jewish students, to defend Jewish life in America and abroad. We are mobilizing our members. We're supporting pro-Israel candidates. We're demanding accountability from institutions and elected officials. We're taking on the media narrative, and we are not stopping. These are not ordinary times. This is not an ordinary moment. This is a turning point for our community and for our country. So I ask you, each of you, to join us in this fight. Speak up in your communities. The fact that you're here tonight tells me you care deeply about this. Educate your neighbors. Support candidates who support Israel. Demand clarity from your leaders. Do not let silence be mistaken for indifference, because history has taught us what happens when good people stay silent. Let's be loud, let's be strong, let's be proud. Thank you all for being here. God bless you. I'm Yisrael High. Now I go to the hot seat, right? Let me take this one.
This is fine. Can't let the sound guys
I know we have an ENT in the room because I met him earlier, so if anybody's got any ear problems.
Absolutely. Speaking of ENTs and doctors, we'll talk a little bit about Matt's earlier history, but there are more important things based on what he said. Part of our problem as Jews in this country is that, unfortunately, our generation, which is a bunch of very smart people, really have failed in educating our children to be able to defend themselves vocally, not necessarily physically, but vocally, about Israel on college campuses and in high schools and places like that. And I just want to bring up one of our speakers from a couple of weeks ago, who is actually good friends with Matt, and that is Judge Roy Altman. You have to go on the JCC Aspen website, go to the videos section, and take the video. It's approximately 50 minutes of Judge Roy Altman's talk here, and send it to your neighbors, send it to your children, because that will give them the knowledgeable information and the ability to defend the lies that are all over this country right now. Not just in academic institutions, but principally there, to be able to stand up and have the real information. The people they try and tell it to will say, oh, that's not true anyway, just like October 7th never happened. But in talking with Matt and having the encouragement for us to speak up, to educate our neighbors, that is one of the best ways to do it. So I encourage you to pick up that video. About 2 weeks ago at a dinner party, a woman who lives here in Aspen came up to me and said, Alan, I need to talk to you. And I looked at her and I said, no way. Because every time we talk, we start spitting at one another about our complete and utter differences when it comes to politics, etc. And she said, no, you need to hear what I have to say. And she pulled me aside and she said, you know how I cannot stand the president. and this, and you know, the whole list. I said, that's enough, I'm leaving, I'm not gonna talk about this. And she said, but I want to tell you, no other president would have had the cojones to do what he did with Iran. And suddenly, I felt like there was hope for the vast number of Jews who don't think like that. Because those are our worst enemies. Those are our real problem. So I believe there's hope, and organizations like this and people like Matt can help us overcome the lies and our own people who will not support us. So I really recommend, importantly, that we help support this organization and stand up for ourselves. You mentioned the right, and we spoke a little earlier today, not so much about Candace Owens, who we had speak here twice when she was a friend.
Which is normal.
And Tucker Carlson, who on Fox News in those days was pretty much a friend, although he always had something back here. And to me, I kind of felt, well, they're just crazy people and they're on the periphery. They're kind of all the way over. But Matt pointed out to me something extremely important and extremely dangerous. Tell us about that, please.
So I was saying to Alan earlier today, I said one of the reasons that we are so fixated on combating the rise of the woke right in our party is a couple of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, we saw what was happening in the Democratic Party early on, and we sounded the alarms when the rise of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and they started getting elected. And you know, all of our friends on the left and in the Democratic Party would say, "Oh, you're just being, you know, you're just trying to scare everybody. You know, it's the fringe. They're not, you know, they're irrelevant. They're not in power. They're whatever." Meanwhile, as they turned a blind eye to that, that quote-unquote fringe has now become the mainstream and taken over the Democratic Party to the point where the Democratic Party is no longer recognizable as the Democratic Party of my parents and my grandparents. But the bigger issue, and this is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and I've been talking to Prime Minister Netanyahu and others about, is the threat from the woke right is existential. And by that I mean, if we don't combat the woke right now, and if it follows the trajectory of what happened in the Democratic Party and gets a foothold and ultimately becomes the mainstream of the Republican Party, there is no party and nobody in politics to support Israel. Israel will be alone. Without a strong pro-Israel Republican Party, there is no support for Israel. If we lose the Republican Party, Israel has nobody. And so one of the things that we believe at the RJC is we will do whatever it takes to ensure that that does not happen. They will have to come through us to get to take over the party, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let it happen. And you know, it's interesting what we're witnessing right now, because you know, people think that the political spectrum runs in a straight line, right? You move farther out left, you move further out right. But it's not a straight line. It's what people are referring to as the horseshoe effect. And the reality is that the further you move out of the mainstream to the extreme, the more the two meet up. And that's exactly why, if you take a step back and you listen to what Bernie Sanders is saying, it's not much different than what Tucker Carlson is saying. And so, you know, we're now in a situation where the woke left and the woke right are basically in the same place with regard to their anti-Israel hatred, their support for lack of American resolve and peace through strength around the world, the very cornerstones and values that are critical not just to the safety and security of America, but to our friends and allies like Israel. So it's really dangerous. And you know, we're at a very, very early stage of seeing this now, and we are going to just bat it down wherever, like whack-a-mole, wherever it raises its head.
Thank you. That was a concept that when we spoke this afternoon kind of opened my eyes. I didn't realize the potential seriousness of that. That's incredible. Now, Mamdani in New York And I'll give you an example. When Kamala Harris, when the Democratic Party decided that she was going to be the nominee, I was in front of the TV going, yes! Fabulous! I mean, a woman couldn't put a sentence together. We were going to win that election. Well, with Mamdani, I was kind of happy too, because this is going to completely destroy the Democratic Party. But there's another side to that. Tell us about that, please.
Well, look, the side is that on one hand, I'm not sure, by the way, that it's going to destroy the Democratic Party. I think in many ways that it will hinder them appealing to a broader base in the electorate. But I think that from their perspective, the populist, the progressive left wing of the Democratic Party is in the ascendancy. So it is going to fuel groups like the Justice Democrats, as I said in my remarks. It's going to fuel groups like J Street. It's going to fuel groups like Students for Justice in Palestine and all these radical groups on the college campuses. It's going to empower them in the halls of Congress. I just think that, while that's good politics for us on the other side of the aisle, we are going to make, we have no doubt that win or lose, we're going to make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party. We're going to hang that around their neck. And there's a lot of people in the Jewish community that, will come to the right and come to Republicans, or at least leave the Democratic Party and sort of be homeless somewhere in the middle as a result of that. But at the end of the day, I can't sit here in good conscience and say, well, that's really positive and good for business for what I do. It's really awful for the Jewish community and for the issues that we care about as a whole. This should send shivers down all of our spines. And the fact that this can get a foothold in the America that I grew up in, the America that I love, and all the stuff that I mentioned in my remarks are somehow normalized now, and nobody blinks an eyelash. And you have rock bands standing on stage saying F the Jews and all this horrible stuff. And people start cheering and clapping, and it's just, this should be a wake-up call for all of us.
And it's bad for the country, because this will encourage other cities. We already see it in Minneapolis. We see other cities where these kinds of people with these kinds of beliefs on the left, did I just die? No, I'm back. Will be encouraged to enter into politics at a high level.
Yeah.
So that can be terrible.
And just setting aside not just the Jewish community, but if Mamdani gets in New York, he's going to ruin the city. He's just going to, set aside the Jewish angle for a second. Anybody who cares about the vibrancy in one of the great cities in the world is going to be, no pun intended, a radically different place if he gets in office.
And so, what is the best thing to do with the group running against them? Certainly it would be better for everyone to support one person. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the reality is this is a math question at this point. This isn't so much about issues. The electorate is pretty polarized. There's a pro-Mamdani part of the electorate, and there's an anti-Mamdani part of the electorate. They're not going to change much between now and election day. Mamdani is at 45, 46, 47%. The anti-Mamdani folks are somewhere around there, 45, 46, 47%. The problem in the math is that you have potentially three candidates splitting up that 40 or 45% anti-Mamdani. We have got to get it down to a binary race. It has to be one candidate running against Mamdani who has the entire anti-Mamdani block solidified. If we can't clear the field and thin the herd in this race, no matter what we do, no matter the hundreds of millions of dollars that people are talking about spending is going to make a difference. It's strictly a math problem at this point.
It seems we have a lot of Jewish friends in the city, because we're all from that area, in New York City, and a number of them are starting to realize what a problem this could be. Unfortunately, I still have friends who have their heads way, way up, where there's no light, and it's outrageous to be friends with them and to deal with this, even though we try and educate them. They just have a block.
And the sort of the other challenge because of the things we care about, the enlightened ones, the ones who see this coming, the ones who have been so frustrated about the confiscatory tax policies, the overregulation, the crime on the streets, the lack of law and order. You know, the smart ones have already left New York. They've gone to Florida, they've gone elsewhere. You're seeing the same exodus out of Los Angeles, out of major cities that are being run by progressive Democrats, across the country. The smart ones have already left, so you're left with people who believe this stuff. And as I said in my remarks, I just can't get over the fact that 20% of Jews in New York City voted for Mamdani. I mean, what are you thinking about? I mean, it's a term I don't like to use, but I don't know what the difference between them and the capos who helped the the Nazis in Germany is. These are people who are aiding and abetting the destruction of the Jewish people.
Yeah, I hope and pray that what we're seeing now online and elsewhere, that a lot of these people who did vote for him now understand the path better of what he is and what he stands for, although at this point he's trying to soften it up to trap those people to come back.
But there's no excuse for, to me there's a special place in hell for people like Chuck Schumer, who tries to promote himself as being Shomer, defender of the Jewish people. I don't know how you could say you're the highest ranking Jewish elected official in the United States of America and not condemn the hatred and the racism and the anti-Semitism of someone like Mamdani, just because you're afraid that AOC is going to run against you in the primary and you don't want to piss off the progressive base in New York.
Exactly.
It's time for political courage. It's time to stand up. And you know what? If you go down fighting for the values that you believe in, and go down fighting for the Jewish people, and you lose your election, then you know what? It's valiant, and you know what? So be it. But the fact is, it's all about his own political preservation. And guys like Bernie Sanders, who do know what he stands for, they value the progressive politics over their Jewishness, and that's just awful.
Before we open up the floor to questions, I just want you to close your eyes for a moment and kind of go deep into your brain and your soul and just think where we would be right now had Kamala Harris and Walz won that election. What has been done in the first 6 months is, thank God for us as Jews, remarkable. But it's just frightening what it could have been. And of course, we've got the midterms coming up. What are your thoughts about what's happening?
Well, I think it's really early still, but I tend to be more bullish on the midterms. Historically, historically the party in power loses seats in an off-year midterm election. That's just the nature. People are interested in making a change and checking and balancing on the party in power. But I think, the economy is roaring right now. America's strength in the world. We're not a soccer ball being kicked around by our allies around the world. America is respected. We're strong. The effort that we did in Iran shows Xi and China and Putin that unlike Biden and Harris, we have the resolve to stand up and fight back when needed. I think we're in a great place. I think we can continue and not get distracted by nonsense like the Epstein files and all this, and keep the main thing, and deliver for the American people. I think we have a real opportunity to buck the historic trends and actually expand our majority in the House and hold the Senate.
It's a have to that we still hold the two houses of Congress to continue this wonderful work. Questions?
Ma'am, I hear today that France is now going to recognize the Palestinian as a state.
Yeah.
What ramifications do you picture this to cascade to the rest of the Western world?
I think it's problematic in the sense that it legitimizes the concept to have a respected, not a fringe country. It's not like some obscure country doing this, but to have a leading European country like France take the lead on this legitimizes the notion. We all know that Europe is lost. We all know that the reason that Macron is doing this is because we're nearing the point where the majority of citizens of France are now Muslim. He's going to do that. It's the same problem that's happening in Great Britain. It's the same problem that's happening in Spain and elsewhere with the incredible immigration coming in from the Muslim countries. The Europe that we knew is no longer and will no longer be that way. The good news is that we have President Donald J. Trump in office. I can assure you that he will use whatever veto we have in the UN to stop this, and he will make it very clear directly to Macron and others that we are not going to reward the horrors of October 7th by giving the Palestinians a state of their own, just period, end of discussion. So thankfully we got Donald Trump having our back. If things, as Alan said, if the election had gone other ways, I think we'd be in a very difficult spot where this could very well hit critical mass and maybe even get through the UN. But with the U.S. And our veto in the Security Council, I don't believe that it's going to get very far. Other than, some PR issues we're going to have to deal with.
And we have presidents of other countries now, like Argentina,
President Milei.
Greece, and I mean, thank goodness we have that going.
Would you comment on today's settlement with Columbia University?
Sure. Again, this is a great win for the president. I think the fact that we were able to get an agreement for a $200 million fine from Columbia is a great first step. Do I wish it had been more? Absolutely. Is this going to send a message to the other universities? For too long, before Trump came into office and under the Biden-Harris administration, while this was going on, there was no accountability. There was no price. University presidents could allow this to go on. Now they know that there's going to be a cost to doing this. So I think it is a good first step. I think we're going to see a number of other settlements with other universities, and I hope this is going to be the wake-up call we need for the university heads to finally get their houses in order in their campuses.
And the courts are starting to realize that it has nothing to do with freedom of speech.
Nothing.
Thanks for what you've been saying, but my question is, Alan mentioned Minneapolis, and you obviously all know what's going on in New York. Why hasn't the Republican Party been able to put up some candidate that can make an impact in New York City, rather than,
Curtis Lewa?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the problem isn't putting up the candidates. The candidates are easy. The problem is, again, it's a math question. There's no Republican at this point who can win in New York City. It's just the same thing with Minneapolis. We could put up, the best candidate. My chairman, for instance, Senator Norm Coleman, was senator from Minnesota. Mayor of St. Paul, couldn't get elected dog catcher these days because Minnesota has gotten so far left. I mean, it's gotten so far left that Jacob Fry, the existing mayor of Minneapolis, who was an avowed progressive, who led the national efforts for George Floyd and all of the protests for Black Lives Matter, and let his city almost burn to the ground because of his support for the George Floyd protest, wasn't progressive enough for them, and now they brought in somebody even farther to the left. We saw the same thing in Chicago, in which the mayor, Lori Lightfoot, was voted out of office by someone who was even more progressively left than her. It's not so much as finding a candidate, it's trying to find a way to win, and the numbers are such in these cities that are just so blue that we just couldn't get a candidate who can get across the finish line.
I'm a retired academic from Northeastern University, and for a long time I was involved with Hillel. I want to echo your comment about how the students, Jewish students, do not know how to respond to the orchestrated narrative by the Arab Muslim students. I encourage you to help those students understand how they can debate, because they really don't know what to do. Hillel can help.
No, I think there's a lot of organizations. We partner with a number of them. One of the groups that I think is doing the best stuff on campus, in addition to groups like Hillel and Chabad, is like AEPI on the college campuses. is giving strength and support to young Jewish men to stand up and to fight back and to win the war of ideas, but also not to cower and back down in the face of this pressure. One of the things that we do, and I think it's extremely important to the point that you make, is, and there's flyers in the back, and I'd love for all of you to take one and join us at our big annual Vegas summit. It's the largest event we do every year. We have 2,000 folks from across the country come out to Las Vegas. We have the President of the United States fly out and speak to us, the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, countless governors, senators, congressmen. It's really sort of the epicenter of one of the signature events that in the Republican speaking circuit every year. We've had a number of very generous benefactors who have endowed scholarships for hundreds of college students to come, immerse themselves, meet with these elected officials. We do training sessions to how they can go back and talk about these issues and what's going on. And so I would love for all, if you know college students who want to come, contact us. But there's also material in the back along with, you see some folks wearing the Trump kippas, help yourself to some of those, and some other propaganda on our organization, the RJC back there. But we would love to have as many students as possible, love to have as many of you come and join us in Vegas as well.
We all know what happened. We all,
No? Did you press the button there?
Thank you. Okay, it's on. We all know what happened on October 7th, but on October 8th, there were hundreds of riots, thousands of people, many of whom didn't even know what they were protesting. And who's paying for all this? And why isn't this revealed to people so we really know who our enemy is?
Very easily, George Soros and the Qataris. That's where it's coming from. And the amount of money is staggering that's going to fund this. You know, if you look at these quote-unquote encampments on these college campuses, they're all staying in $600,000-$800,000 tents. They're all, it's all coming from somewhere, and that's where it's coming from.
Then why, if Qatar is part of all this, why is Qatar part of the negotiations that are going on now in some island off of Italy?
No, well, interestingly enough, the U.S. today, Steve Witkoff had a meeting actually in Doha today that was hosted by the Qataris with Hamas. He withdrew from the talks, pushed away from the table, and said Hamas doesn't want a settlement, Hamas doesn't want peace. And I think we're going to see a very significant increase in U.S. engagement along with the Israelis to finally bring an end to this and get the hostages out. But the Qataris are involved. They play a double game. There's no question. They say one thing to the Arab street and engage in the Arab street. On one hand, they also try and portray themselves to America and to the Congress as being an ally who wants to try and help. It's the arsonist who comes to try and help put out the fire that they started. And I hope that there's greater as some of these revelations come out, greater accountability, and ultimately we deal with Qatar in a way that we need to, and not continue to buy into this narrative that it's very duplicitous.
It's relatively simple. We close that base.
Yeah.
Period. Last two questions. Close.
Air base in Qatar.
I certainly, excuse me, I certainly.
Can I just make one point about the air base real quick? It's ironic, one of the rules of having we have the largest air base in the Middle East is an American air base based in Qatar. One of the things that we had to agree to in building the base is that they had veto power over what it was used for. So, when we decided that we were going to use bombers to attack Iran, they vetoed it flying from Qatari airspace into Iran. So we literally had to fly and refuel from Omaha, Nebraska, all the way to Iran and back because our quote-unquote ally in Qatar wouldn't let us use the airbase, which was hundreds of miles away. Sorry.
I certainly agree with what you're saying, and I personally am a strong Zionist. But how do you argue against other people who see the New York Times and papers like that publishing day in and day out Palestinian children and women being killed by Israeli bombers? So how do you fight that argument?
No, it's a great question. Look, the New York Times is never going to be our ally. The New York Times has an agenda. There's a reason the president calls it fake news. As somebody who was privy to a lot of the inside deliberations and what was taking place between Israel and the United States in the run-up to Iran, and the New York Times was talking about how there's all this daylight and the Trump administration was trying to rein in Israel from attacking Iran, and all this nonsense that I knew was absolutely false because I was hearing very different reports from people who were actually inside the meetings and in the room with the Prime Minister and the President when they would meet. Look, there's nothing we're going to be able to do to combat the New York Times. The New York Times is going to be the New York Times. What we have an obligation to do is to do a better job at what the Israelis call hasbara, or public relations. And I think one of the things you're starting to see is a realization on the part of the Israelis that they're looking to what we as Republicans have used very successfully, which is bypassing the legacy media organizations in the era of social media and bloggers and all this stuff who have far bigger reach than the New York Times in terms of communicating people like Joe Rogan and others. The president was incredibly successful because he went on shows like Joe Rogan and got beyond the filters of the legacy media, the network television shows, and spoke directly to the people. Prime Minister Netanyahu, you may not have seen this, but Prime Minister Netanyahu did an hour-long podcast with this podcaster called the Nelk Brothers, who, in all fairness, I've never heard of in my life, but have something like 7 million followers or something like that. That's how we're going to get around them, by leapfrogging them and doing the non-traditional, I'm too old for this as well. So, I've got a lot of very smart young people in my staff who are helping us navigate all this, but it's a whole new world on social media and the blogosphere and all this stuff that, everybody with a keyboard and a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection is now a radio talk show host or a TV producer. You have the ability to get a message out in a way that, a generation ago we couldn't. And I think that's why you're seeing the subscriptions and a lot of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, all heading toward insolvency and bankruptcy because people aren't consuming their news through those vehicles anymore. What we've got to do is do what President Trump understood from an Israel perspective, and do a better hasbara by taking advantage of these new media channels that now exist.
How many of you will be here the last week of August? I've just set up a talk for Tuesday, August 26th, of a young man from Israel who is starting out advancing a small company to purely be online and to get the truth out to the people who spend so much time online. So I'll give you more information about that. That's August 26th at 5 o'clock.
What date is that?
It's a Tuesday, August 26th. Last one.
Nothing in your book or online after about murder. Nothing at all.
I'm sorry?
There's nothing in your book and nothing on the website about the visit by Doug Murray.
If you go to the brochure, at the bottom of the brochure, it shows you where to register because it's not here with Chabad, it's registering at Magen David Adom site. And if for any reason that's not there, just check with the office. They will give you the site, or get a hold of me and I'll give you the site.
Ironically, I registered a long time before, but it automatically pops up as last year's month. That's what's up. So it doesn't have anything.
Try and get in touch with me at the office to get the link to the specific place. So you did it on that site. All right, you're in. Last question.
Incidentally, CNN is also talking about how Israel is starving the poor people of Gaza. My question is, nobody talked to you about, mentioned Ukraine. when is President Trump going to change his policy to be something that we would all agree with?
I think he's already changed it. I think he's, if you saw the recent announcements, he's partnering with the Europeans to significantly increase the amount of offensive weapons to Ukraine. I think he's come to the conclusion that Vladimir Putin is not serious about ending this war. And I think the president's comments over the last several weeks and the actions that he's got with bringing the Europeans together in consultation, in conjunction with America to get the most advanced offensive weapons to Ukraine is a very positive start. We're very pro-Ukraine at the RJC, and we believe that that is a proxy war for what's happening. The potential for Xi looking at what to do in Taiwan, or Putin looking to further expand his reach in Europe. So these are all tied in, and I think the president is in a much better place now on that.
Matt Brooks, thank God for the work you're doing. We sincerely appreciate your coming. Thank you so much.
Alan, thank you so much. Thank you all.